people have just said that earlier at the beginning of this meeting, which is it's a wonderful day. It's great to see everybody here. Just for the purpose of recording, it would be very helpful if the board members again just went round very quickly and introduced themselves, starting with Linda.
Hello, Linda Cullen, non-exec director.
You said board members?
We include you in that.
Oh, thank you. My name
What's the team?
Thank you very much. My name is David Tita, as Associate Director of Corporate Governance and Internal Company Secretary.
I'm Anne Baines, I'm one of the non-execs.
I'm James Taluk, Deputy Director of Lancing and Quality.
Vanessa Devlin, Executive Director of Operations.
Phil Gale, Chair of the board.
Patrick Developer, Executive Director of Strategy, People Capacity, and the Deputy Chief Executive.
On Balfour, non-exec director.
What have you got on here, Exec Medical Director?
David Tomlinson, Director. We have Tim at the top, which you won't be able to see.
We want to see me, but Malcolm subsidiary communications and Emily Bassett, Senior Digital Officer Communications.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you. So, and we also have, I don't know, we're not fitting how much is behind us.
Also part of the team.
Who's also part of the team, essential part of the team. Great, welcome everybody. So just to start off with, are there any apologies?
Chat back, Steve Forsyth and Sarah Winter.
Any declarations of interest? Ready for SSL? Yeah, great. And just the procedure again in relation to our board in public meeting today. Procedure questions from the public at our board meetings. So the board meetings are held, as you know, in public rather than being public meetings. So this means that the public are very welcome to attend, but cannot actually take part. Nevertheless, as chair, I'm quite happy to conduct a short question session at the conclusion of the board meeting. And members of the public, staff and governors are permitted to ask questions at the meeting, and I will invite those questions at the end of the meeting. But obviously your questions in relation to the relevance of them, every question must relate to the items received or considered by the board of directors at the meeting. Questions should not refer to or require discussion of confidential information, including personal information about any individual. As you know, it is actually being recorded as well. And as chair, I may interrupt to stop a question being asked where it's not relevant to the matters of the meeting, or it's some form of disclosure of a confidential nature. There is no need for notice to be given to ask a question at the meeting. However, we do ask the public, and we encourage them to give notice of their questions to the Trust Secretary by 12 noon on the working day before the meeting. And that's to enable a full response that can be prepared. And no member of the public may ask more than one question at any meeting unless we deem it's appropriate to do so. There are no limits to the questions for governors. I don't believe we've got any governors today. And the time allowed for questions by the public and governors is actually limited. And as chair, I may curtail the time available for questions if we really are tight for time. Okay. So moving on with the agenda, we've got the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 7th of June.
I was really sorry. I think, if I recall, Monica was at the last meeting, although she's not on the attendees list.
Yes.
That's that, because I think she was, and the reason I think it's because in my mind's eye, there's my other issue, is that she was sitting next to the people from Forensic Standards.
Yes.
She was, and who we don't mention that they attended. And if you recall, we particularly appreciated their contribution. And I think it might just be worth in terms of the staff stories, and I understand how, in terms of patient, service user stories, we might not give a great deal of flavour of the issue necessarily. I think it would be helpful in terms of some of the staff stories to give that in the minutes, so that if people are looking at our minutes, they can see the sorts of things that our colleagues are telling us about.
Yes.
So I think that would be helpful. Those just in future, that would be helpful. Thank
On
you.
that, Phil.
Yes.
Boldly, they're not put on the 18 issue. I think it might be that we put something alongside it, so it was discussed. So actually, we'd have to think about how do we make the part of the meeting to be more,
Oh, okay.
you know, formally.
Well, we can still at least feel that we're here. Right, okay.
Okay.
Okay, right. Thanks, Dave, that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Thanks. Yeah.
That clarification there. So just going to the minutes of the meeting, are there any points of accuracy or anomalies or omissions? And if I just flick through page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, 9, 10, or 11. So we can accept the minutes of true reflection of the minutes taken on the 7th of June, taking into account points that are made, particularly in relation to Monica being present. Okay. And so if we look at the matters arising in the action log now, and first one, which is for Sheena and Vanessa, agreed to obtain a more detailed report and understanding of some of the timelines of joint working with GPs. But it says that it's not due, but we don't know when it's due. There's no time scale, so I just wanted to ask, do you have some kind of time scale?
Things going on. I can give a bit of update, and I just think how we can put something maybe into the escalation report that Machine and I do.
Yes.
So we've agreed with GP colleagues around having a detailed workshop in October to bring the colleagues together and to think about how we can work better together. I think what we're finding is GPs think this is how we should work better together, or this is how we think. You need to get into the room and make sure that we're actually all on the same page. So there's that workshop that's going to take place. And I've attended meetings with GP colleagues, with ICB colleagues as well, around a wider sort of piece of system work. We've got some lead GPs who really want to work with us from a mental health perspective. We've got a real good interest, a real keen interest in mental health as well, so that's good. But agreed that we will continue to do the work that we're doing as part of the community transformation. So there's some key GPs that we're working with there as part of, working at place, working with the primary care network. So all of that will continue. And then we've invited a couple of our GP colleagues to work with the community transformation around new posts that we're putting out into primary care, new posts, and have a conversation around what does that job description look like, how can we work better together. So lots of pieces of work. We'll probably need to put them together maybe in a better sort of detailed report, but that's kind of a bit of an update. Lots of conversations have been taking place, if you can imagine, since last board chair. So to our degree, I think we can make that action that in the next chief executive chief operating officer report that we'll specifically write something. Yeah, it's ongoing, so it's not
Right.
I think that's part of the issue. So it's an ongoing piece here.
Right.
So should we take it out of there as an action and possibly,
Yeah. The trust values 22-23 and 23-24 goals. So Patrick, it's scheduled on the forward planning for December.
Yeah, so I think it's about reflecting the conversations of the committees and the report that comes here. So I think what we agreed is that we'll make sure that happens. I think that was a point that was being made by Anne.
Yeah. And obviously it's noted within the report, the patient safety report, and then the patient safety report. Lead on that, Steve. It's got complete. It's got the smiles. that's what's in your report. It's reflected in Machine's reports as well. So that concludes the action log. Moving on to the agenda and to the chair's report, my report. I don't know if people have had a chance to read through it. I won't go through all of the points in the report, but I am happy to accept questions. Just wanted to point out just a few things. Since my last report, I had the pleasure of visiting our Criminal Justice Recovery Service at Perry Bar Custody Suite, which was great. And I spent some time meeting the staff and the police colleagues and hearing about their work and obviously some of the challenges they face. The staff were quite positive from the last time that I had interactions with them, and also from the last time that Anna went and paid a visit with them, and they said that things have significantly improved. And so I just wanted to convey that to the board, that staff, that it's slowly dripping through, but they're feeling that, you know, slowly maybe their voices are actually being heard, and we are actually listening and acting upon what they're sharing with us. I also visited the ODSD unit as well and spent some time there and had a walk around the different suites. That was really a great eye opener, and everybody was really keen to show me and to share the work that they're actually doing, the great work that they're doing, but also share some of the challenges, obviously, which we know about in relation to staffing as well. And one of the things that is really key, and I'll talk about it, is actually being visible. Staff were really pleased to actually, not just because I'm the chair, but just to see that we're taking the time out, and Rashid does it on a regular basis as well, we're taking the time out to actually visit our services and engage with our staff. And just wanted also to point out that I visited solo. And what was really great was who we presented a staff award at that event. I remember saying to her, I am coming to visit your service, and she may not have been there when I actually went to visit, but she was, so she was so keen to actually take me around, show me around, and they were really super charged that we could take the time out. I don't want any service, but particularly a service that it's got some distance away, it's in Solihull, to feel like they're the poor relation. They are really a key and integral part of our service, and it'd be great if other board members took the time out to see the great work that they're doing over in Solihull, particularly young people as well, doing great work there. And finally, just wanted to mention that, yeah, that's the main things I wanted to mention really. But happy to receive any questions if anybody has any.
Just a very quick clarification, Chair. On that point about NEDs started to visit trust services, I take it that we've resolved the DBS.
Yes, we have.
That's fine.
Yeah. Yes, that's been resolved finally. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so if we move over to the Chief Exec and Director of Operations report.
Bill, I'll take the reports read. I just wanted to highlight the attention to things. From a people's perspective, I just wanted to thank our colleagues for the way in which they've managed the ongoing industrial action, so enabling us as far as possible to continue to provide services. And I think that, you know, people have stepped up to make sure that those that want to take industrial action have been able to do without concern about what they're leaving behind. That isn't to say that we aren't concerned about the long-term impact of the industrial action, and particularly when it's not clear that there is any resolution in sight. So we are certainly willing to consider that we need to be planning for a longer term period of this sort of unrest, and particularly concerned about how we do that through the winter when things are more challenging.
per se. So wanted to thank people, but also wanted to be realistic with board and public about our concerns about it. From sustainability, I just wanted to highlight a few things. So particularly around the money, and I know we'll get an opportunity to talk about that later in the board meeting as well around the financial position, but just to again talk a little bit more about beyond the organisation. So really thinking about this as a Birmingham and Surrey health system. In recognition of that, we have brought together, since the board last met, all of the executive teams sessions in Birmingham and Surrey Health, for a variety of reasons, but one to really think about how are we going to manage collaboratively and together and think system when we're under financial challenge in particular. And there are a number of pieces of work that have been spawned as a result of that coming together. Alongside a commitment that we'll aim to do that every 6 months or so, to ensure that we're considering our priorities together. But those work streams include looking at what are the financial things that we might do to get economies of scale then rapidly across the system. Also looking at a piece of work around our general workforce, with some medium term, but some very immediate actions around how we work together to reduce our reliance on things like agency, as well as planning for a system-wide big conversation with colleagues that work in our organisations. Just this time around, we've had an update in this report from the West Midlands to provide a collaborative on 5 priority areas that have been worked on. And you'll note that there are a couple of other areas of work that we are also considering around what will we bring strength-wise or ability to do things differently if we work at scale across the system. We've touched this morning through our patient story on ADHD, and it's certainly a concern around our approach, not just in West Midlands, but nationally. And in my role as chairing the East of England and West Midlands Mental Health and Learning Disability and Autism Chief Executives Network, we are looking to see whether or not we need to bring together a short letter to provide to our national team colleagues around the kind of things that we'd like to see happening nationally, that we're obviously prepared to support, but that we think that are beyond the collaboratives that we can establish locally. Wanted to just to highlight something that wasn't in the report, but as a Birmingham and Surrey Health system, we had the pleasure of a visit from the NHS England board last week. They came to Birmingham and Surrey Health to have their board meeting, and as part of that, they stayed overnight and visited services across the system on the Friday. So thank you to all our colleagues at Barbary, particularly those in our eating disorder service, our mother and baby unit and our deaf service, who welcomed those visitors and left them leaving with enthusiasm and inspiration. Can't tell you how inspired they were by that visit. So thank you to everybody who was involved. It was a real opportunity, I think, to give NHS England a showcase of mental health services, when quite often what they'll do is to concentrate on what's happening in the acute sector, what's happening in physical healthcare. So it was a real opportunity to do that. From a quality point of view, I just wanted to highlight that we're still in discussion with the CQC about section 31. We, as the board know, had expected from those people that we've been working with prior to our inspection and during our inspection, we had expected through that conversation for it to be considered as part of the inspection, potentially lifted, given there were no further actions to be taken. We're aware there's been a change in personnel, and our representations to them around this have been that they feel that they probably need to consider doing that through further inspection work. So when we meet with them, which we will be doing in the next few weeks, we will be asking whether or not we can do that through a planned focused inspection, and that we plan that jointly through a focused inspection, as opposed to waiting until we come to the board again around a more general inspection. Just a couple of other reports in there, particularly wanted to highlight the long-term workforce plan that has been published since we last met, and we're working both as a system but as an organisation too. So his colleagues, to determine what does that mean for us in terms of our delivery. And I will start there and pass over to Vanessa for her.
Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, there's quite a detailed sort of bits of updates in there just this month. So if I take maybe just pull out a few from each of the sections or our divisions. So if I start with ICCR, so there's an acronym, so Integrated Community Care and Recovery Services. So it kind of says what it says on the tin. Lots of our community services there, very recovery focused. We have inpatient rehab wards as part of that division. Just to say that they're working really, really closely with the community integrator. So that's another collaborative working with the community and the Birmingham Community Health Trust. So how we can work more in a physical, from a physical perspective and mental health perspective in the community based on locality, how can we join and work together? So great, our two pieces of work now starting to join up. So that's really, really good to see that. And we're part of many, many meetings actually bringing that mental health voice and that parity into that space. That's good. The ICCR portfolio also wanted us to mention, you know, that they do have high caseloads in the community mental health teams. They are really, really struggling, you know, with appointments, with the appointments of care coordinators as well. But wanted to give some assurance to the board that they're doing significant work around that. They're looking at obviously their work pressures. They're looking at how they're going to be working around caseloads. They're doing some sort of what they class as stratification work, people who don't need to be supported in the community mental health team and how they can be transferred over to our new team that we have in primary care working with students. Also, we've got a new workforce, the STR workers, so support time and recovery workers, again working in the community mental health teams, and how they can help and support people from a CPA perspective and also in the caseloads of those teams. So they're really, really focusing on their stratification work and having actually quite a detailed plan of how they're working that through, which is really sort of good to see and to hear that. We've also made a note in the report just around the new neighbourhood teams. So these are the teams, the new teams sitting in primary care. They've now seen 9,000 patients. So that's absolutely amazing. You know, we've rolled out the teams area by area, and they are picking up referrals from GPs, supporting people in primary care who don't need to come into secondary care mental health services who may have done previously in the past, and working around different pathways, which does involve, you know, the voluntary and community sectors as well. So just make a note of that around, you know, that really, really good work that they're doing there. Also highlighted here is the performance deep dives. So this always forms part of our integrated dashboard. So part of my role is around performance in all of our divisions. So they're showcasing here that the work they're doing around those deep dives, looking at CPA approach, looking at waiting times, looking at DNAs for people who are not attending appointments, and actually how they're going to work more collectively and inclusively around those areas where at the moment there are some shortfalls. So it's good to see that they've highlighted that work. We had a deep dive with them and they're taking that work through so they can showcase that day next time they come to their deep dive meeting. If I move on to secure and offender health, I know I'm pretty in there, so I won't go into that one. So again, one of our divisions where it has quite significant staff shortages. But again, we're trying to give board assurance around that they are looking at that on a daily basis. They are allocating staff based on where their shortfalls are, but also have really robust recruitment to look at filling those vacancies. Also working with exploring different roles that will sit within the division as part of their workforce planning. What they said also here that, as we know, sometimes the ward managers and the matrons would be on the ward and in the numbers, which is probably a good thing as well, working alongside staff to see how the working operation of the teams work. Just a note here around Arden and Lee site, that the work we're having done on the site there, environmental work around the hub and the shop, which is really good, which is now complete. The cafe there and the plans up for the service users working in the cafe, so I think that's also really good to note. If I move on to acute and urgent care, Again, they talk very much around the flexible working arrangements that they're implemented in the division. The division there particularly some values around retaining workforce. So how can we help and support our staff from a wellbeing perspective, flexible working, and that's part of their health and wellbeing offer to the division. They're also implementing health and wellbeing champions to actually support the work, which I think is really good and is noted in the report as well. So a very different way of working, listening to our staff, what can we do differently to support and enable you to work in, again, quite a busy division from an acute and urgent care perspective. Made a note here around call before you convey. So this is something that we've implemented. So it's working with our ambulance service and police and our bed management, as opposed to taking someone straight to A&E who doesn't have a physical health need, but more mental health, but actually diverting and bringing them to ourselves instead, or putting people and supporting people in different pathways. So that is really, really working ever so well at the moment. And we were asked to attend a conference which was being put on by KPMG, and to actually showcase the work we're doing. So I think that's a really good thing, actually. So, you know, some of the work has been acknowledged in our system and actually been showcased across the country. Just quickly from a dementia and frailty, older adults and community mental health teams. So again, we're doing some work as part of a system in collaboration with partners with Birmingham hospices. So again, just sort of acknowledgement there that the work they're doing, two particular work streams, which is sitting under the North Community Hub around dementia and diagnostics. So I wanted to mention that. And then there's a little section there just around perinatal community teams, again, continuing to develop, got their operating framework and looking at different disciplines around the establishment, and very much involving the work with our experts by experience. They're very much integrated into that transformation piece. And just finally, Birmingham Healthy Minds. So that's our talking therapist service. Again, I think I've highlighted here, we've been highlighting the integrated reports and the challenges we've had around workforce there. But they've got this really good recruitment campaign, and we're slowly seeing people joining the organisation. And at that high level of rating, you'd say, and more sort of detailed into high intensity trainings as well coming to work with us, which is having a significant impact on reducing the waiting lists. And there is a plan around quality improvements around that as well. So they're taking that QI approach around how we can work differently to support people who need to come into our services, and how we can do that sort of quicker and more efficiently. I shall stop there, Chair.
Thanks.
We should stop to
That's great. Linda.
Yeah, thank you. Possibly yourself, Vanessa, but it's that sort of theme of the wellbeing offer for staff around quite a few components in the directives in your report. I think Phil also mentioned that in his visit, sort of staff's feedback to him. And I suppose what I'm asking is, will we get some sort of sense of a qualitative feedback here of the impact of this work in terms of some sort of measure or reporting of the impact of those sort of initiatives with staff?
Yeah, I mean, we can do it. Would it come through our people committee, do you think? Yeah, if we pull that together, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because we're expected to see that, you know, things like our staff surveys.
Yes.
Our reports. And those, I think that's ultimately where we want to see that kind of impact. And also in the narrative, so there's the three narratives first in that.
Yeah, so we have a regular report that comes to the people committee, and within that report, some of what we've asked is understanding some of the impact, because the uptake on some of the offers can be quite low. So, for example, yoga, it's something that's seen as quite valuable, but then the uptake is quite low. But we've got some people who really, really use that. So it's how we maximize on that to make sure that we have, in terms of the breadth of the offer, knowing that not everyone will kind of take that up, and also tailoring the offers to the different services that we have, because there will be other offers where people will work new patients will probably find it more difficult to access compared to those who work in the community. So our wellbeing and steering group have really been driving that forward and bringing assurance reports through the community.
Thank you. And I suppose it is absolutely that sort of flexibility and tailoring it to different situations and different staff groups and different ages and knowledge of some of these offers as well. It's how you maybe have taster sessions to some things and, you know, encouraging people to try things out that perhaps they haven't before. So there's lots of different ways, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point as well, because some of the divisions, even just a ward, might have a little initiative of their own that they've set up because someone's had this idea. So I think it's how actually we sort of try and sweep all of that up, you know, to actually look at their impact, because that just might be an impact for that team, what is absolutely significant for that team. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, so can I just comment? And again, it's on Vanessa's section, but I'll put it that way. Reading through this, I think it struck me how more confident some divisions might be than others in terms of the work that they're doing, and the kind of drawing that up into a more strategic approach. And clearly, whatever I see, whatever integrated care community are doing, there's a feeling emanating from this report.
Yes.
And also for acute and emergency, again, there's just something coming through this in terms of a really integrated perspective of their division. Not so much in some of the others, and I just wondered how we can work to make sure that growing confidence from what might be from the front line upwards starts to come through a little bit more elsewhere. I think that would be really helpful, and you just get that feel from the report. And clearly there's some great work going on here. What will be really important for us, I think, is to see some of those, not seeing like massive numbers like 9,000 patients, etc., starting to come through in terms of waiting times going down, where we're looking at performance reports in other places and how we can, because I can't quite make the connection between this report and then some of the stuff we talk about in performance, and making those connections would be really helpful, I think, and showing that confidence. And just to finish off, I think the concept of the deep dive and the work that they're doing there seems really to be at the core of their confidence, because they're drawing the views of frontline staff through, and that's what we would encourage all the way through, as you know. So great stuff is
thank you. I'll take that back. It's interesting. Sorry, Rashid. It's interesting how you pulled out those two divisions, and it's absolutely, as you read this, they are really, really confident, and there are good things that happen in the others. So and Rashid and I just spoke about doing a bit of work on this report. You know, it's not all about. There are challenges, so we're trying to say, okay, we have challenges here, but this is what they're doing about it, which is why that section around the deep dive. And they were very proud of their deep dive, and I think we've had some really good ones recently. It's some ongoing work that Dave and I and Taslim are actually doing with the teams to make sure that they are pulling all of that up. But they wanted to showcase that in this report this month, so very glad you picked up on that. So that's good, and I know Ricky might want to add to that as well.
Yeah, so I think Vanessa's covered off that Vanessa and I have been having a conversation about this element of the report and how we support and what's the best way for us to support it in the shape that we think it ought to be. I think also it's important that your point about making the link between what's being heard in performances. Dave and Vanessa have been leading on a piece of work around really looking at how divisions are going to take accountability and responsibility, including through to community around performance. So I think that triangulation, if you like, will begin to happen. We haven't got to that stage yet, but there's a piece of work happening around reconfiguring it and starting to socialise that in the coming weeks with divisions. And then I just wanted to pick up your point about when we might see things impacting on waiting lists. I think this is a really difficult conundrum for us, because at the moment, if you look at those 9,000 people being seen in the hubs, they are potentially 9,000 more people that could have been before the transformation work could have been referred into our community settings in H2s. But what we are seeing is that the CMHT numbers are continuing to increase. And so actually, lots of what we are doing isn't necessarily having an impact on drawing down, it's having an impact on making it less challenging than it could have been. And I think that's a bit of a reality check for us. And that doesn't mean we don't need to stop. We need to do more and more of that kind of work. And I think what we're partly seeing in the numbers at the moment is less that it's impacting on bringing down, but it's impacting on not increasing. So if you look at, so last week, the Public Accounts Committee published a report about mental health demand, and it very clearly made the reference to around between 2016 and 2023, 2022 and 2023, that there was an increase of demand and referrals of about 44%. The investment in terms of just establishing the workforce has enabled a maximum of about 22% increase. So there's still a huge difference in productivity, efficiency, and the level of demand. So I think this is something that we more and more need to be looking through that lens as a board. It doesn't mean we shouldn't stop doing the transformation work, and we shouldn't be continuing to do that. I think that's to the context.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense to them, to be honest. I think it's just making sure that we are clearer about the connection between the two. What is it we're looking to achieve? Is it about impacting on demand?
Yeah.
Or you know, it's just being clear about the objective, because that's clear, that's helpful for the teams. If I could just add one other note, I think the other thing that comes out from the report is how mental illness issues are everywhere in the system. Again, it's a bit similar to the comment I made earlier about neurodiversity. And because in this, we refer to mother and baby, we refer to A&E departments impacting on the use of ambulances, we refer to the community, we refer to primary care, acute and, you know, forensic services. And the spread of services that we're working with, we shouldn't underestimate that spread, and how that is quite difficult for sometimes our own colleagues to see where they might make the best contribution. And I think that's it's just really important to say that, to remember that we're we talked about not putting people in boxes, but we have, you know, so we need to think about it more broadly. Yeah, I think that's really good.
And I think it goes back to what I was saying, that mental health is everybody's business. I mean, that's an old saying, but it absolutely is. And I feel now we're getting more parity from a mental health perspective in our system. So, you know, working with our acute colleagues, there's more of an understanding now. Again, that's taken time, but we've got some amazing champions, and champions who work outside of the mental health trust in other systems as well. So I think that's actually helping. There's a lot of work to do. You know, it's involved our local authority colleagues as well, and our voluntary sector organisations. So a lot of work to do, but I feel like we're beginning to sort of go those. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I agree with that. I think there's some thorny issues there.
Oh yeah.
So for example, one of our thorny issues is the pressure that as a mental health service we put under when somebody turns up in an emergency department who is deemed to have a mental health need. When we know we are already managing quite a number of high-risk patients really intensively in the community, and we haven't got to the stage yet where it's acknowledged that actually that might, as a system, given the holistic and context of the mentioned, that might be the best place for that person, because actually, if we take them out and put them into a bed today, they may well have actually recovered in 12 hours and might need that. So it's that, you know, so I think we're still siloing quite a lot. So those sort of thorny issues that we need to go through. But there's an openness to the conversation, the work every basis.
And on that, some of the on-call conversations reflect that. So it depends largely who's on and what the pressure is on that time. I've heard that described. So the bed manager was saying that, and it was heard, which is unusual. Our bed manager.
Okay.
And not to lengthen out this discussion, and obviously we've got quite a few other items on the agenda, but and there are some comments that I actually put on convenience. I won't go over those now, but I did want to just draw on, in relation to this conversation, the concern particularly around
integrated community care and recovery, around the words that you used, Vanessa, in the report, which is significant pressures. And I guess in terms of CMHTs, and I guess my concern is, yes, we know that that's having an impact in terms of waiting times, but what impact does that have in terms of onto the individual, and obviously onto kind of the potentially the wider public, that we have to really be cognizant of, and doing all that we possibly can within our gift to try and reduce that risk, because at the moment I deem it to be significant risk, because of the potential harm. I'm not saying that we've got the answers all on the table and we can just change the situation like that, but just acknowledging and recognising that we as has been referenced in the report, we're recognising that it is significant pressures and we're doing all that we possibly can, and maybe looking at other partners as well that we can actually pull in to assist and support us to actually manage the significant challenge of people waiting, because obviously as people wait, then it means that their health deteriorates, and as their health deteriorates, it shifts them up into a higher risk. Okay. James, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Just talking about the progress made around the primary aims and services in transition and the risks involved, as mentioned. It's services in transition, but it's good to see, it will be good to see the service users narrative with the figures. As Valerie said, change in provision, there are things that might come out of what has changed. For example, I worked with Salford and Salford Health Watch when they were gearing up their living well arrangements, similar to PCN arrangements like the neighborhood teams, but they have ethnographic research attached, like all experience. This is my experience of the services, and as we report, you have the theming of the experiences, real-time attachment of what people experience to the figures, and that could inform as we transition and reform.
Yeah, I think it's collected to it, but yeah, good. Yeah,
Thank you for that. We'll move on with our agenda over to quality, and yourself, Linda, so if you just pull out the key salient points that you want to bring the board's attention to.
Yeah, so we've had 2 meetings since the last board, and I will, you obviously have the papers, and there will be some overlap with James's patient safety report, so I'll try and take from not what's in that, but what might not be in that. Just to sort of alert the board, we've had some very detailed conversations in committee around the issue of seclusion within the inpatient settings, and got a lot of assurance on this around that we weren't, because we had difficulties in we have a need to seclude people in areas which aren't designed for seclusion, and that we're not stopping that. So there's a lot of discussion about how we are taking these conversations forward, and our restricted practice steering group have been thinking about this in a lot of detail, as has our chief nurse and deputy medical director at that. And what's clear that it's not just an issue for us as a trust, that the process of seclusion seems to have a lot of variances, and there isn't a current sort of consistent approach and guidance. So what we've done is actually triggered through the restricted practice steering group, we've triggered a national debate around this. And I'm not sure when the forum is, but we're asking for, we've opened it up to the CQC and NHSC, and we're expecting some sort of national debate. I don't know if we have a date yet for that, to just address exactly these issues. So that's really positive, actually, that we've taken a lead on that. I don't know if either.
It was last Friday.
Oh, okay, brilliant, thank you. I knew it was about to happen. And will that continue? Presumably, yeah, thank you. And similarly, we picked up on it earlier around the learning disability and autism. Again, lots of conversations at the ICB level and NHSE And we're certainly looking at how, as a committee, we'll take oversight of the pathways and the changes that we're making in the organisation. So that's in hand. Around a bit. I won't look at that. Just to say we had a really good update from our new head of safeguarding, Mel Homer, who gave us a lot of assurance on the actions that she's taken in relation to child safeguarding and adult safeguarding, and has developed a really clear plan to manage the actions and learning from external reviews, and to create a sort of single point of contact for external partners as well, which was really positive. I don't know anything else. Oh, and Rashid had already mentioned around the CQC and conversations around the consideration of whether we can go for a more focused inspection around the section 31 notice wasn't there originally. But I'll take any questions because there was a lot there that you've already had to read.
Thanks, Linda. Open for questions.
Thank you. It was just something I was wondering about CQC report, the new CQC report, and all the recommendations that are in there. Do they all go through GPs?
Yeah, we have
so everything. So even the sort of the people ones, for want of a better phrase, or the well-known ones.
Yeah, we have all the must-dos and the should-dos coming to committee, and we can see a sort of timeline of addressing those.
Right, okay. It's all right, because I was just wondering whether for people, we should be seeing some of the people ones. That's all. It's one of the, my thoughts about where we're seeing things, whether it would be appropriate for us to see them perhaps on a quarterly basis, where there are specifically people-oriented things, because there are some.
There's a big overlap, isn't there?
Yeah.
Between the Safer Staffing project, which obviously very closely across the two committees, QPS and QPES, and again, it's in my report, but there's a lot of detail discussion.
Like a chat then, outside of the meeting.
Yeah.
Just it might just be that we just pick them up more specifically here as a transfer across at various points, or
Thank
or
you.
whatever. Just whatever we think is the best thing to make sure it's covered, like and it's kind of exposed in a broader setting. Thank you.
Yeah, and just wanting to add on that as well. Such a perspective will mean that both committees have the opportunity to see components of the action plan which are relevant to them.
Yes.
To get more assurance.
Yes.
So it's
just a thought. It's just a thought, really. I'm kind of conscious that there were some in there, and we haven't specifically drawn them through into people. So I was just checking that they're being checked. Not checked is one word. The assurance is being given in some place, but then should we think that through? And I think it's probably a point of conversation perhaps for us to have. So that's right, Patrick.
Thank you.
Sorry, Patrick.
Yeah, so just that's a really good set of questions from this. It'd be really good to see in the report that staff assaults decreased and we're just reflecting that this is something that does feature in our staff survey to how staff feel feeling safe, being at work. Whether you think this is something that we could apply our QI approach, quality improvement approach, just in terms of really start to think about reducing staff assaults. So whether that's something that the committee would like to consider.
No, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, isn't it? Something we can pick up with that support as well. Yeah.
Any other questions? Or yeah. Thank you, Linda. So we go over to the patient safety report. Can we just have a, Lisa, thanks for coming, we're just going to have a 5-minute break.
Yes.
Yes, please. So, Tim, are we recording the recording again? While we have this 5-minute break?
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yes.